There's an ad. And we are online.
Excellent.
Hey.
Okay, I've heard everyone so far. Which means that everything is fine. Miles, you want to say a couple of words just so I can check your balance?
Sure. Should I make an official introduction of myself, or just
No, we're not recording yet, but
you're not recording yet? Okay. Well, I'll just talk here
Yep, that
until
was
you
just-
can.
that was just the sound test.
Sounds good. Cool.
Yeah, we have learned through very hard lessons to do all this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Happened once.
It was once too many.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done streams before where we're trying to wrangle like a video component where I'm like Discord chatting with the Pixeljam co-founder Rich and trying to stream something that I'm doing on a separate monitor and trying to get like an audio mix in there so I can do like music production. I haven't quite gotten it down yet.
Looks like we're
So,
ready to
hey,
begin.
Okay.
I think so.
Cool.
All right, let me
We've
get
got all the music lined up and stuff, so
yeah, let me Discord, why are you a pain in my ass?
You know why.
All right. Gulick, do something for the top.
sure.
All right, you may count down when ready.
We can begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Much like an elephant, Fragments of Silicon never forgets.
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Daylight Interviews. Been a bit of time since we've been able to wrangle one of these, but here we are once again, and welcoming to the program this week is Miles Tilmann of Pixeljam.
Oh,
Hello, how are you doing today?
pretty good. Thanks for having me here.
Very good. Right. So, how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and
Mhm.
all of that sorted business. And we begin this journey by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Okay, that's a good question. So I was probably introduced to video games when the Atari 2600 came out. I suppose I was 1 year old. That was 77. But my family purchased one, I believe, in around 79 or 80. And I got right to it. My brother and I were pretty obsessed with it, as were most of the neighborhood kids. So that was, I think we actually got one at home before they even started letting me go to arcades. So I'm definitely a child of the 80s, and so I have very fond memories of, 2600. And then when I was old enough, going to, your typical 80s style arcades with, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Centipede, all of those early 80s classics. And then I started getting less into arcade games and more into personal computing. I had a TRS-80 that I think my aunt sent over because she didn't want it anymore. I think we got that in like '82. So I started programming on it when I was about 5, I think. That's when I was around 6. So I started learning programming when I was around 6 or so on the TRS-80. And then I believe in 1984, my parents purchased a Commodore 64. Uh, at the time, I didn't realize how expensive they actually were. I remember looking at recently like what these computers adjusted for inflation were.
Oh, and you're talking about like the Trash 80 and the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Those were the cheap computers
Oh,
of the
that is true. Commodore was priced to be competitive. That's very true. Um, I guess compared to what else was available, yeah, those were the cheaper
compared to
ones.
like like what we the IBM PC.
Oh, right, absolutely, yeah. Or the Tandies. I remember the Tandies that came out in the '80s. Those were really weren't those quite
Yep.
expensive? I think so. So
Ditto
yeah,
anything from Apple. Something never
right.
changed.
So yeah, so I started programming from a pretty early age. My main obsession at the time in like '84, so we're getting these magazines. Ahoy was my favorite, where it just had like 4 to 5 games. They had the actual code in BASIC, almost always in BASIC, and eventually in machine language, but I did the basic ones. And that's how I basically I was learning to program before just through books that we had bought, but that's where I actually started finishing a few games. I actually found, so I still have a Commodore 64, not the one I had when I was younger. I obtained it again recently. And I've got an Atari 800 XL here as well. And I actually found some of the discs that with the actual games that I had coded in '84 and '85. I'm like looking at them right now, actually. I'm like in my computer cave down in the basement here. So yeah, I did that for quite a bit, and then I was kind of stuck to my Commodore, unfortunately, for quite a while. I probably should have been outside more, but I was doing that almost all the way up until the Sega Genesis came out. So I kind of skipped since we had a Commodore, it competed well enough with the NES and the Master System, so that didn't really like bother my parents too much to get one of those. Um, my friends always had them too, but when the Sega Genesis came out and 16-bit home consoles took over, that's when I basically like begged my parents for one. I think I got one for Christmas shortly after they came out, and so I was on the Genesis for quite a while. There was a video store right next to us where I could actually rent games from. So I played through a very large portion of the full Genesis catalog.
I miss the weekly video rental store pilgrimage.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, kind of a precursor to what we have now with just like streaming services, but it was so much more tactile and interesting and I didn't really feel pressured to like, because I used to save up. They were so expensive. I was looking at something recently about how much video games cost back then. And I realized like to buy a new Genesis game back then was about equivalent to like $70 or $80 today
And
for
that's just a
inflation.
regular game. We're not talking about RPGs.
Oh, right. Yeah. I remember like, do you ever play Phantasy Star on the Genesis? Any of those?
Not when it was new, but I did play it later in life from a Sega Smash
Okay.
Pack.
Yeah, those were incredibly expensive. Those were probably like $100 for
Yeah.
inflation now. I didn't even realize it. I didn't have the proper concept of like value back then, I guess. But yeah, being able to rent them for like $2 or $3 for a week, that was kind of a revelation. So I just, I didn't feel as pressured to like complete them. I could just try them out and play them. I mean, I spent so much time on each one I rented, I usually ended up beating most of them. But so that was, let's see, those were like high school days. Then I kind of fell out of computing and gaming in college. Got more into like my major there was actually printmaking and like fine art. And that's actually at Florida State was where I went to college. It's where I met the current other Pixeljam co-founder, Rich Grillotti. We were both art students there, and we became close friends pretty quickly. And then after we graduated there, we moved to Chicago. We were roommates in Chicago for a bit, and that's where Pixeljam was born, basically. I wasn't really into console gaming at the time. I was more into just like gaming on PC, and Rich was really into making pixel art. Well, I get he did. We weren't even calling it pixel art back then. This is like the early 2000s. I don't know what it was called in
Just
the early
art back in
2000s.
those
It
days.
was just like he was like, "What if we made art with really big squares?" Yeah. Um, and so he had always, he's actually 3 years older than I am. And so the 2600 was probably more ingrained in his psyche even than mine. And he'd always been curious about how to, represent pretty much anything with as few pixels as possible. It was always a curiosity of his. And so the company was actually born. We did like an art show in Chicago with a friend of ours, and Rich made a bunch of like pixel models, mostly female but also male, of just like they looked like they were runway models, but they had 3 by 3 pixel heads. Um, and so that's the first time he actually made like official pixel art characters. And then my job at the time was doing flash animation. So my like the job I had was just doing contract flash animation. That was the flash boom, the glory days. So like when I graduated in 98 from college, that was also like, the dot-com boom. It was really easy to get a job. So I just got a job making flash splash play flash, how every web page needed a flash splash page. You had to watch like a 15-second animation before you could get into the actual website.
I miss the old internet.
Yeah, so do
Flash.
Not you, Homestar Runner. You're fine.
I. Oh, we actually went to college with those guys. Those guys were Florida State students.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I didn't know them, but I had a friend that knew them. And so he told me about Homestar Runner before I guess right about the time they were starting to get pretty big. But these guys I think they were film students at Florida State, and they had made a bunch of short films like with themselves in it. And they were like, if I don't even know if they're around like to view anymore, but you can just tell it's got that Homestar, quirk and vibe, except that there was them as actual people doing these skits. But like you could tell the voices are there. So yeah. But anyway, yeah, those were the glory days, right? The Flash glory days. And so that's where Pixeljam started. We started making Flash games because, see, that was 2005. And we experimented quite a bit until we finally completed one. And then we threw it up on Congregate and Newgrounds, I think. I think it was Newgrounds first. I don't think Congregate had launched yet. I remember having a meeting with the two founders of Congregate before they had launched, where they were telling us about like their vision for this site, where like anybody can post a game. Like, even though Newgrounds was already doing it,
I was
Congregate
about
had
to
a
say it's
slightly
subtly gesturing towards Newgrounds over the corner.
yeah, right. Exactly. um, So yeah, Congregate, Newgrounds, and a couple other sites were basically where we got our big break, more or less. We weren't really selling, we weren't monetizing the games. They were all free, the free Flash game glory days. Um, but that was when we made Dino Run. So that was like we were basically hobbyists until we made Dino Run. And then when Dino Run came out in 2008, that basically like solidified our careers as game developers. Um, it was not financially successful, but it was played hundreds of millions of times. So you can go figure that one out. We were not business people. We were art students. we 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 had like a if you could like donate any random amount of money to us via PayPal, and we give you a password to unlock hats in the game. But the password was the same for everybody. And so of course that just spread, and probably millions of people got the password. And we only got a few donations, but that's fine. um uh and so after that, Adult Swim contacted us, and then we made about 10 to 12 games for their site. um and so that was a lot of fun. They're really good people to work with. Sadly no longer in the video game industry anymore, as far as I know. um We did get to make like a Commodore 64 demake of Robot Unicorn Attack, and I got to make a Commodore 64 cover of Always by Erasure. That was a lot of fun.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. I co-produced it with Mark DiNardo, who was doing a lot of the music for our games at the time. So we did that for a while. It started feeling kind of like a treadmill, though, because Pixeljam has this habit of over-delivering on everything we're hired to do. We just can't help ourselves, I guess. And so after that, we started getting into mobile games. So we released a few original titles on mobile. This is before free-to-play kind of took over. It was more when you could like actually have a reasonably successful paid premium game. And then when free-to-play took over, we migrated to Steam, and that's where we've been mostly ever since. And so we made a few titles for Steam: Potato Man Seeks the Truth, Glorkian Warrior, Last Horizon, none of which were like massively successful. But they kept us going, and we always did contract work on the side to keep the lights on. And then so we had a game, Last Horizon, that was made by Jeffrey Nielsen, Chimeric. And then after he made that, he started working on Nova Drift, and that was in 2014. He showed me the prototype for Nova Drift around 2014, and we thought it had a lot of potential, and so he kept working on it. And 5 years later, it released into early access in 2019. And so I did the music for that, and but Jeffrey did everything else. And I wouldn't. He was a Pixeljam employee for a while, but then by the time he was working on Nova Drift, he had his own company. He was basically a solo dev. So we released that in 2019. That was probably the most successful game that we had ever been associated with. So we were the publisher and also the musician on it. So it was a good relationship, and that kept Pixeljam going for years. And then all the while we were working on Dino Run 2 as well. I could just keep going and going. Maybe I'll take a break, though, in case anybody else wants to chime in with something.
No, I think that's this is what we wanted out of the journey question.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like the path from childhood gaming to what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And with that aside, how has Nova Drift been doing since it reached 1.0?
It had a really strong launch. So that was September of 24, I think, pretty much almost a little more than a year ago. It had its strongest month as 1.0. But then after that, I would say it's like cooled off quite a bit. And I think it makes sense. It actually had its like longest peak in 22 and 23, and that was when the whole roguelike explosion happened with Vampire Survivors, and which I don't even consider a roguelike. I don't even know why they call it that, but that's a whole other conversation.
Make it stop. Make it end.
Yeah, yeah. I played Rogue. I played Rogue on a black and green screen computer in like 1980 on my dad's VIC-20. Like I know what Rogue is. And none of these games are roguelikes. But anyway,
I'm like,
uh,
we've actually reviewed the original Rogue, or at
yeah,
least a version of that.
yeah. I still love it. I still think it's a blast to play. I mean, it is tedious. But like if you want to talk tedium, I was a D&D. I was really into Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, and when those games came out for 8-bit computers, I was obsessed with them. Like I played through almost all of the D&D games for Commodore, and if you want to talk tedium, those things were really, really like you could spend 1 hour on a battle. And at the time, it was fine. Like I was totally fine to just like play for like 4 or 5 hours and barely get anything done. Because I also played tabletop D&D, and that's kind of what it was like. A battle could easily last half an hour or more. Um, and so I guess when ARPGs came out, what was that huge D&D one, the like kind of like the first hack and slash or the first popular one?
Oh, Dark Alliance.
Dark Alliance, yeah, yeah. I remember playing that and thinking like it's got a D&D flavor. I really enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like D&D to me.
I mean, it was something that was meant for the console set.
Right,
Like,
that makes sense.
trying to do like proper Baldur's Gate on a console, especially in
Hmm.
those days. They tried. They tried
Right.
bringing Baldur's Gate to consoles, but it never took.
Oh, really? I can't even imagine how you would do that. So that makes sense. Because I was also Baldur's Gate, I thoroughly enjoyed. Baldur's Gate 2 was basically the end of my. So I don't really play games anymore. I haven't really sat down and enjoyed a game since Baldur's Gate 2. I know that was a long time ago. Baldur's Gate, I got into Baldur's Gate 2. It basically made me very ill because I didn't do anything but play it. This is right before I met my wife, I think months before actually. I was in Chicago. I was obsessed with the game. I wasn't enjoying it. It was basically like stolen my life away. And a friend of mine came over once and said, "Miles, are you okay?" He like looked at my face and said, "Are you okay, Miles?" And that's the moment I realized I had a problem. So I actually put the game away and never touched it again. And actually since then uh I haven't really sat down and completed a game from like beginning to end. That was like 20 years ago, which is strange. I mean, the only games I play now would be like I have a bunch of like emulators here and consoles, and I have like 4 kids, and so I'll play like my 6-year-old was like kind of obsessed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, and so we just fire that up on the emulator and
Mm.
play it all the way through. That only takes like 25 minutes to beat or something. Like if you have unlimited quarters.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it, it, it's an arcade game. Like
yeah. Yeah.
the
And
trick,
so
the trick is it's punishingly difficult to suck the quarters away.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know, right?
I
The
speak
the
from experience playing. I played quite a bit of that at the local Chuck E. Cheese in the '90s.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would Golden Axe though. Golden Axe was always my favorite. And that one you could actually beat on a quarter or two if you were good at it.
Golden
Um,
Axe never did it for me.
no.
I
I
never
guess
liked how it.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I never liked how it moved.
Mm.
That's fair. It's really slow.
I think the only arcade game I ever actually played in an arcade as a kid, back when quarters were still relevant, was the Simpsons one at the
Oh yeah.
arcade at the place where I could go for vacation.
Yeah, also a great one. Wasn't that was also made by the people that did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
It looks similar enough, so
Yeah.
probably.
I think it was both Konami, so
Yeah, yeah, and the other big one was the X-Men arcade game.
Oh right, yep.
Hmm.
Which my 6-year-old also discovered recently at an arcade, and that one actually was very generous with quarters. I was afraid when I gave him like a handful, they'd all go into it. they get sucked away right away. But the X-Men was actually quite generous. So yeah, I don't really play too much anymore, mainly because I started having kids. I got married right after that. Well, I met my wife soon after that, and we got married like a year after that, and then we started having lots of kids, and I started Pixeljam. So all those things combined are not really conducive to playing games. I still enjoy making them though, and that's what I do now for my. It's not a 9 to 5. It's more like a 8 to 8. But
Right.
so there you go.
No, I think we understand. You've got a lot of other things that, quite frankly, are worth focusing on rather than playing video games.
Sure.
It's like that whole raising kids thing and making sure you have a livelihood probably
Yeah.
takes precedence.
They do tend to take priority. If I ever have free time, it's usually spent either like thinking of ideas for the business or just decompressing. I actually enjoy DJing quite a bit. I'm like standing right next to a mixer I got last year, and I've been doing like dance parties for my friends, so that's kind of like my main hobby now.
I mean, whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, anyway, so shifting to some other games,
Sure.
I know one in particular I think people will be wanting us to talk about, and that's X Zodiac.
hmm
Um, so, I suppose, first of all, for the uninitiated, what is X Zodiac?
Well, I would say it is basically it's a Star Fox-esque. I mean, I guess it's a fox-like.
It's like, if you're looking for the genre name, it's a rail shooter
Yeah,
because
it's a rail shooter, right?
I think we saw not just. I mean, Star Fox is the obvious influence, but
Right.
I can see quite a bit of Panzer Dragoon in this as well.
Yeah, and also I think Sin and Punishment as well
Right.
was a favorite of the developer Ben. Um, yeah, and so well at first it was mainly just an on-rail shooter, but over time he started adding levels that are close to Sin and Punishment and Panzer Dragoon, and we had talked about like will the character ever like leave the vehicle and start running around? I think Star Fox did that in a later sequel though, didn't they?
Yes.
But I don't think it was well received, if I remember correctly.
It was not.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been in development for quite a while. I met Ben on Twitter actually. This was maybe 2020 or 2021. He had just made just like a simple boss battle, just as like he was using the Godot engine and just kind of experimenting with it. He'd always been a Star Fox fan, and it really took off on Twitter. Um, and so that's how I noticed it. And then we started talking about bringing it to Steam and uh, getting it published there. And so I think I don't even have my dates correct, but I think it entered early access in like 21 or 22. Um, but since he's a solo dev, he's just been picking away at it slowly. Kind of similar to Nova Drift's schedule. I mean, it took Nova Drift was in development for 5 years before it entered early access, and then it was in development for another 5 years before it left early access. I think X Zodiac will probably take the same trajectory. I think it'll probably reach its 1.0 release in like 27, is my guess at this point.
I'm like, now see, for most people, that's going to be a surprise. For us, that sounds about right.
Yeah. It was.
We've had a lot of developers tell us the same kind of story of, a game taking, X amount of time, anywhere from 3 years to like 9, 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mainly a choice of Ben's, though. We've talked about expanding the team and him getting help, but it's kind of the same thing for Jeffrey on Nova Drift. He's happy just doing it all by himself at a much slower pace. And that's understandable. Pixeljam has kind of been scaling up in its projects in the last couple years. And while it's great to see such a large-scale project happen at an accelerated pace, there's something to be said for just picking away at your own thing on your own time without anybody telling you anything else and asking you to get it done. So I don't bother Ben about like deadlines or anything like that. When he's got new X Zodiac level updates ready to go, um, we work to promote them when they come out, and when people ask when it's going to be done, we just say we don't really know when it's
Every
ready.
so often just sends an email, bro, are you alive? Cool.
Yeah, well, actually, that's true. Like it'll be quite a while between like my contact with him, but like there's no reason for me to bother him about it, because I know he's always working on it here and there. So I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes he's just working on it constantly. He goes through a lot of iterations that you never see in the game. I've seen like levels that just didn't make it in, plenty of bosses that get completely scrapped. So like there's a whole lot of content. He works very iteratively. He'll work on a level design, and if he doesn't like it, he'll just scrap it and start over. So he's not really like a planner. He just picks away at it and just does it that way.
Right. Which once again, yeah, we've met other developers that take that approach, especially if it's a side thing and not their main 24/7 focus.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's like for him. Sometimes it's full time, sometimes it's part time. Um, and for somehow this is not the case with other early access games that Pixeljam has been involved in or made. Um, so just to be clear, Pixeljam is a studio and we're also a publisher. Um, and we're also kind of like a hybrid because Nova Drift, we published and we did the music for it, and I help with a few other things on it. X Zodiac we're more of just a publisher, but then like we have games like Dino Run 2 where we're the sole developer as well. So oh boy, I just lost my train of thought, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, on X Zodiac, who does the work on like the ports? Like this game is on the Nintendo Switch, right?
No, it is actually not yet.
Oh, okay.
We would like it to be, and I think when it comes time to do it's kind of a no-brainer to have it on a Switch.
Mhm.
And I think when it comes time to do it, I think we'll probably just see if Ben can do it himself because Godot is supposed to have console support, and I imagine it's only gotten stronger since he started working on the game. Um, so we'll attempt to do it ourselves, and by ourselves I mean Ben will do it himself. And if that doesn't work, we'll probably just work with like a third party that specializes specifically in getting Godot games onto the Switch, which I do know they exist because they've contacted us. We get every so often, we actually quite more than so often, we get emails from people that are offering to like port Nova Drift or port Dino Run or port X Zodiac to consoles and stuff like that. So
Mm.
just not ready. We've never published a game on a console before. I know plenty of developers that have, and it's a whole different. It's not necessarily more complex than getting a game on Steam, but I know Steam really, really well. Um, and I know, what it takes to get a game on there. I don't have a lot of experience getting games on
Well, and there's a
consoles. It's
lot of
just
like nuanced things you need to deal with consoles, like make sure you don't accidentally trigger something that can cause the console to shut down or whatever.
oh right, right. And I know the QA and certification process is really strict.
Mm-hmm.
And so like with Steam, it just goes through like a 1 or 2 day review, and they just make sure it's not malware. But I've heard so many stories from developers where the QA and certification process to get on a Switch or PlayStation or Xbox just takes months and months. And it is so incredibly thorough. And it's also quite expensive, apparently. So that's not something I'm looking forward to, but we'll get there eventually.
One of these decades.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in no rush.
Anyway, so switching to another game, Utopia Must Fall.
Mhm.
Now, I remember this one as we did some impressions of it not like a few months ago. And this is kind of a take on, say, Missile Command or a game called Paratrooper. It really reminds
Oh,
me.
right. I have seen Paratrooper, yeah, but Missile Command would be probably the most obvious comparison.
So I remember liking it to a point. I think my big problem is, well, a problem I have with a lot of games that go very hard on the neon is
Oh, right.
it just becomes a visual overblow.
Yeah. The latest update actually has some new display settings where you can reduce the gain and the aperture and the line width, and so hope because everything's additive in that game, and so I know exactly what you mean, especially by the later stages. Things will just keep adding, so it's just like pure white. So yeah, you should be able to tweak it a little bit more. But let's say the history of that game starts about 2 years ago when a friend of mine, John Davis, who was an extremely talented graphic designer and musician, and who had done a little bit of like HTML5 work with us on the side, he like quit his full-time job and said, "Hey, I'm quitting my full-time job. I don't even know what I'm gonna do." And I think he's one of the most talented like people that I've probably ever known. And so I I wrote him and said, "Hey, let's do this thing together. Let's make like a fantasy console that imagined like vector scan games, like not losing market share in the early 80s, right?" So the Utopia Must Fall is actually made with this engine that we created that we've made other games in. There's one other game, Grid Ranger, that's on Steam. It wasn't nearly as successful as Utopia Must Fall, though. So he and I were working on that. He's done most of the work. I basically like had the idea, like the name, and I sent him a sketch that just had like a city and like a missile command, like interface, and he basically rolled with it. He's done like almost all of the heavy lifting on it, and so that was in development for about a year or so until we launched in early access last year. And we just released another update for it, I believe, 3 days ago on Tuesday. That's been a blast to work on, though. I really enjoy that.
Well, that's good. So, do you think Utopia Must Fall is going to have the same kind of early access trajectory as, say, Nova Drift or Exodiac?
Probably not, just based on its current trend. Um, it was not. It was not. We've released games that I would consider commercial failures. Plenty of them actually. And we've released games that I would consider to be successes, like Nova Drift, and Exodiac I would consider to be like a mild success. It's successful enough to keep if it sells enough to keep development going. That's a win right there. There's like massive success where you've made enough money to make a bunch of new games afterwards, if not just one. That's a great success. Just breaking even, and especially these days in the industry, breaking even to me is a success. So Exodiac does still pay for its own development more or less. Utopia Must Fall does more or less. Some months are better than others. I think we'll be doing its 1.0 launch in 2026 sometime. And I think that will do, I think it will do all right. I think it will definitely feel like it was worth the effort. When it came out, I was really trying to push it to all the YouTubers and streamers that were like obsessed with all these other roguelikes. I was really hesitant to call it a roguelike. I never did when I reached out to people. It's kind of it's a tough spot to be in. Like when you're reaching out to YouTubers, you can often get their attention more easily if you put roguelike in the subject and describe your game as a roguelike. But since I didn't really think Utopian Must Fall was really much of a roguelike or even a roguelite, I was hesitant. But when people started posting videos about it, they would call it a roguelike.
I mean, if it's not exactly the same on every play, there's an argument to be made.
Yeah, that's true. And that's how it was. It was randomly generated attack patterns, and the upgrade tree feels very roguelikey. I still have a dream to make an actual roguelike where, it's just grid-based movement and you're exploring a dungeon.
I've encountered those.
Yeah, no, yeah, I prefer that definition too, but some people
Yeah.
use it for anything with any amount of procedural generation.
Right. The thing I'm thinking of actually has no procedural generation, and it's purely like I would just author it and it would be designed a very particular way and it would never be random. So I guess I couldn't even call it a roguelike. It would be a dungeon crawler at that point, I suppose. But anyway, I digress.
Indeed. And I suppose that leads us to what I've been able to surmise is your next major project in Dino Run 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, now, what is this thing in comparison to Dino Run 1? Because, once again, from what I've been able to gather, it's actually quite a bit expanded and different. Like, it's some sort of sandbox thing.
Yeah, and we never we didn't specifically plan for it to be a sandbox as the first playable. It was almost like an accident a couple years ago because we've actually been working on the game since 2019. We had like an exploratory crowdfunding campaign for it then that had like a moderate success. We didn't promise a full game with that crowdfunding campaign, which was a good idea. Um, and then it kind of went into development hell from 2019 to 22. And then in 2022, we got an entirely new team, at least coders and artists, and we started over completely from scratch. Like code wise, we started over from scratch, not art wise. And then since 22, it's been going fairly well, but it was a small team that was mostly quarter time or part time, just picking away at it. And then in 2024, we were able to hire the lead coder full time, and so that accelerated it quite a bit. And so we always imagined it was going to be just like the first one, which is like a pixelated prehistoric. I wouldn't call it a racing game, but we do use that word in
Endless
there.
Runner?
Yeah, it was, well, yeah, it was one of the original Endless Runners when it came out. It was inspired by this game, Runman, Race Around the World. I think that came out in 2005 or 2006. It actually had a remaster come out in the last year. That and Cannibalt, if you remember Cannibalt.
Yes.
Those were what I consider to be kind of the original Endless Runners. And Dino Run 1 came out around that time, maybe between Runman and Cannibalt. And so we didn't call it an Endless Runner at the time. Mainly because Dino Run 1 is not endless. It does have an ending. You do reach the end and you get to the next level. But, it was precursor to the whole Endless Runner explosion on mobile. And then Yeah, it's a runner. Like you can call it a platformer, but we would just call it a runner. Um, because you really are trying to get, you're running from that wall of doom, and that's still the core gameplay in Dynron 2, but we haven't even added the wall of doom yet. The technical requirements of what we want to do for Dynron 2 are so massive that it's we we had a lot of problems to solve at the beginning that we did solve eventually, but it took years to solve. And the main things would be like, how do we render enormous objects in pixel art, but give them like 48 frames of rotation? And so we had to figure that out. We're actually using a 3D engine, not Unity's 3D engine. We're like rendering the objects in Blender and then running them through, I think, like an automation process to get all of that. And then how do we have like how do we have like super pixels in different layers? Because if you look closely, like it's not exactly a pure pixel art game like Shovel Knight or something like that. It's actually pixel art that is overlapping other pixel art at like a sub-pixel level. And so we had to figure out how to get that super crisp. So that took a while. And then the the physics took a while to get. The Dyno motion took a while to get. Like the original came together really fast. Dyno Run 1 came together in about 7 months. It was just me coding it. It was just Rich doing the art. It was very simple. Dyno Run 2 is not simple. It has a massive scope, and part of that, the sandbox arose from me just making a request a couple years ago where I said, "Hey, can I just like pull out a boulder and a log and just can you give me a simple interface so that I can just kind of do some physics experiments in the current engine?" And after that happened, we enjoyed doing it so
Once you
much.
start doing physics, you'll never do anything else ever again.
Yeah, exactly. Um, And so we just kept adding to the sandbox, and then we gave it to some backers, and they were having fun with it. They were building like enormous like dino skeletons with it, and then when we ran our Kickstarter recently for it, we finally had multiplayer in it. So it's got like basically serverless multiplayer, like true P2P. Um, and it does require a little bit of wrangling to get going. It's kind of like the peer-to-peer that you had with like Doom and Quake, where you had to like see if you were port forwarded properly and set up your router and all that. Sometimes it just works out of the box. It depends on your router. We will eventually have like online servers that are easier, but right now, well, the main idea was that we didn't want multiplayer to ever be dependent on a third-party service because Run 1 had its multiplayer end in like 2022 or 23, and that was kind of sad because the people that were supplying it went out of business, and they had to take it down. So the new one should always be online. You should always be able to play multiplayer with someone using your own computer as the host or guest, and it has full rollback, which is very difficult to figure out when you're not. So let me back up. The engineers for that game, there's four of them now actually, and the lead engineers, they try not to rely on any third-party services in Unity. So it's built in Unity, but they really don't use things that Unity provides. They tend to just roll everything themselves. And that obviously has pros and cons. The cons being is that it takes a really, really long time, but the pro is that they understand it completely and it's never going to get pulled out from under them. So the multiplayer is built to last forever, basically. And so we finally all got all that going recently, and the community just started making things that kind of blew us away right away. We added pivots to it recently. We're going to do joints and welds pretty soon. You'll be able to make cars and kind of fantastic contraption style objects. You'll be able to do it. You can do it currently with a friend, with like up to 5 other people. You can all build together, and so We just released an update this morning, actually, to the sandbox for backers that adds a bunch of new materials, some of which are very heavy, some are very light, lots of different colors. We're doing like a Halloween contest now. It's just really cool to see uh, the community using it to build basically whatever they want. Like they're making like little subgenres of games within the sandbox that have their own rules that they set up. So there's no gamification yet. It's kind of the equivalent of like when you used to go out and play with your friends, back when you were like 12 years old, when you just had like a piece of chalk and a ball, and you just make up your own rules, and everybody adheres to those rules, and it's still fun. You don't have anything on screen enforcing those rules. But people have already made like tennis and mini golf and puzzles. Somebody made chess. um, and I think it's just going to keep going. So I'm really excited about like what that game's future is going to be like. It really just started. And yes, there is no actual Dino Run 2, Run from Doom experience in it yet. That comes later.
So, is this game going to release in early access?
Yeah, in 2026 sometime, probably mid to late 26 at this point. Um, we don't want to release it. So I would say it's in first access currently. Um, People can give us money, and in return, we will give them the current playable. Um, and so we are selling the game now. It is like what some people would call early access. It's just not on Steam. We're very, very careful with, releasing games. We don't want to release the game on Steam until we know it's in a state where we will get mostly positive reviews for it. And if we release a game on Steam where it's really just like even if it's a very well featured sandbox, if you're not running from a wall of doom, I think people are going to be upset, and they're going to make it known in the reviews, and that's going to be not good. So we're not going to release it on Steam early access until it has that core gameplay loop. We might release it elsewhere beforehand. In a way, we've already kind of released it. The way Kickstarter has positioned itself in the last year or so is that they say they are not a store, but you can kind of use it as a store if you want to, because they offer late pledges now. Like campaigns don't have to end after 30 or 60 days. You can just keep taking pledges afterwards. And anyone that pledges to the campaign, we just give them a copy of the game right away. They just download it from itch.io, and so in a way it's kind of for sale now. But once again, there's a lot to do for it. I think it will be in development probably for the next 5 to 10 years, and we're playing the long game with it. Basically, there's a lot. There's so much we have on our to-do list for it, and I think by the time it's done, it's probably going to resemble. I don't think it's going to be on like the breadth of like Roblox or Terraria, but I think it will be kind of in that category where you can use it not just to play the game itself, you can use it to like make your own games. As long as they're pixelated and prehistoric.
I mean, that's a setup that's seen success in the likes of Little Big Planet.
Right.
I hesitate to say the game Dreams is a success, but dear God, could you create a
Oh,
lot of
right.
stuff?
Yeah, Dreams is, I mean, yeah, that's on a whole different level. I almost feel like they give you too much freedom in Dreams, and that's why like it's not such a smashing success. It sounds weird, but Minecraft is like, okay, you have to work with voxels. Um, you can do anything you want, but you got to work with voxels. Anyway, I just saw a Jurassic Park update where like well, I guess the characters have always been like non-voxels, haven't they? So I don't really know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, what is and isn't an actor in Minecraft has always been a little bit weird.
Right.
My persistent complaint is that they can't really do vehicles well, like larger vehicles than a one-person boat. Well,
Yeah, that makes sense. In Dino Run 2, you will be able to make vehicles, but they're going to look more like Flintstones cars. It'll always just be probably like stone wheels attached to a log, with like a roll cage on it. But you will be able to like have motors. I think in the next month or so, we'll be able to apply it like a persistent force to a pivoted object, and so in that way, you will be able to almost like Technic Legos. If you've ever worked with those, it'll probably be more like that.
Right. So we are running low on time here. So I think
Okay.
I will conclude things by asking, what other projects do you have coming up in the future, if you can talk about them?
Sure, yeah. We have been making a lot of very small games on the side. We have like a mobile game that's basically like a cornhole simulator, but it's like cornhole on a 2600. Um, it's called Cornhole Hero. That came out a couple months ago. We've been making updates for it. There's like a top-down run and gun called Operation Zero that we had a demo in Next Fest a couple Next Fests ago. It's been slow going. That'll probably come out on Steam in 26. Um, we've got another mobile game that basically feels like Dino Run Light. It's like Dino Jump that we've been working on. We've been picking away at for a couple years. That'll come out on mobile in a few months, I think. And beyond that, I think once we get those back, it's really strange that we have games that are. We've also got Grid Ranger coming out. So Grid Ranger is another game made with the V99 vector engine. That's already on Steam, but it's coming out on mobile in a couple weeks. Um, we have games that are pretty much complete that we just haven't had the time to launch, which is a very strange feeling. It wasn't always like that. We're a really small company, and I'm basically the bottleneck for launching the games. And I had my head down on the Dino Run 2 Kickstarter for so long that we're just kind of slowly releasing these other games. I think after this, we're just gonna focus on Dino Run 2 and probably Utopia Must Fall and just make those our main things. Those are the things that have kind of been the most successful in the past couple of years, so it makes sense to mainly just double down on those.
Right.
So as far as like new game ideas, we have them all the time, but we tend to just write them down and not revisit them because they're very distracting, as attractive as they are. Um, so yeah, that's it.
All right. All right then.
Cool.
So I'll see if my colleagues here have any final questions for you.
Sure.
I think I'm good.
yeah, I think I said what I had to say.
Cool.
Right.
Well, thanks so much for having me here.
No problem. No problem. We're glad to have you, and we do wish you luck in the further development of likes of Utopia Must Fall and Dino Run 2. And as far as talking about them again, probably way down the line, since we tend to like to have new things to talk about,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. But in
Cool.
the meantime, um, the games are X Zodiac, Utopia Must Fall, and Dino Run 2, and Nova Drift. You can either buy them in early access or 1.0 on Steam, or you can go and wishlist Dino Run 2. Or can they still back the project?
Yeah, we have late pledges still enabled on the Kickstarter project.
All right. So if you wish to do that, you can do so today.
Yep, and they'll get the sandbox right away once they do that. They don't have to wait for it.
Indeed. All right. So yeah, that'll about do it for another installment of Fragments of Silicon, the Daylight interviews. Be sure to tune in next time for the Sunday reviews. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.